Committee. Senator, it's good to have you here. It's not what we expected that we would be talking about this evening, but can you weigh in on this, your reaction to what took place, how we got here, and whether we need to have a serious conversation about Capitol Police security for lawmakers like yourself?
Well, let me begin just by offering my condolences, my thoughts, my prayers to Charlie's family, to his spouse, and to their children. This is not something that any of us on either side of any political aisle want to see happen, ever. And so this is simply very, very unfortunate, and we offer our thoughts and our prayers. And, look, this is just a bad message from what we would hope otherwise would have been an opportunity for peaceful discussion on specific issues, talking about, our differences in a very, very normal way, a way in which people can have a discussion, having differences, having differing points of view, and still remaining as friends and as colleagues. And so to see Charlie Kirk in this particular method, this is just a terrible, terrible day for America. And once again, it is something that I think, with regard to what we do here in the capital of the United States and the way that we treat one another, is something that should be an example that you don't have to have violence in the middle of political discussions.
Senator Rounds, do we need to hear from the president in a call for unity to end some of this political violence? Is that what we're waiting for?
I think the first thing that the president did was to offer his thoughts, his prayers, his condolences to Charlie's family. I think that's, the first thing that we all want to do. And then along with that, it is an opportunity for us to once again tell the rest of America and the rest of the world that we can have differing points of view and not be violent about it. And so anything that any of us can do to offer as an example the way that we should treat one another with respect, that's a positive thing. I think that's what Charlie Kirk would have wanted to have had happen. And most certainly that's something that I think we should continue to carry on, which is peacefully discuss, have your differing points of view, argue it, debate it. It's healthy for America, but our founding fathers wanted that to be done in such a fashion that we could still be one strong, unified nation, even if we have differing points of view. And there's nothing wrong with having differing points of view.
Well, I appreciate your point of view on that, Senator. We were looking at some polling from Ipsos from back in July that asked voters about political extremism and threats to our democracy. This poll with Reuters showed 27% of Americans ranked political extremism as the most important problem facing the U.S. How about you?
I can just tell you from personal experience here in Washington, we work across some of the most polarized areas in terms of ideas and ideologies. But if you talk to members of the Senate, Republican and Democrat alike, we get along with one another. We have visits with one another. We go to lunch together. We have a prayer breakfast together. We have Bible studies together. We are not enemies. We may have different points of view, but that doesn't get across very often. And so the example that we should be able to offer is one of unity in terms of making America better than what it is today. Our founding fathers said that they wanted to create a more perfect union. They didn't say our union was perfect to begin with. They wanted it more perfect. Well, that's what we should be focused on here. And sometimes in the middle of our strong emotions here, we forget to finish with that particular part of the message, which is regardless of our points of view, we're Americans first. And we treat each other with respect and with dignity. And here in the Capitol, in the offices that we have, I can tell you personally, and that behind closed doors, Republicans and Democrats alike get along. We respect one another. We consider each other as colleagues and friends. And we would hope that across America, whether it's a coffee clutch or whether it's a political meeting, a city council meeting, or a state legislative body, that we remember that we are all Americans and that we have a whole lot more in common than we'll ever disagree on.
Senator Rounds, I want to return to a subject that we were planning on discussing with you ahead of today's tragedy, and that, of course, is what's going on when it comes to Eastern Europe, especially in Poland, with Russian drones being shot down by NATO forces. Senator Rounds, in your perspective, is Vladimir Putin opening up another front of the war in Ukraine?
I'm not sure whether, and once again, it'll take time to work its way through the intel agencies and to do the background on it. I'm not sure whether it was intentional that they were trying to get across Poland, or if they simply lost their way because of the lack of appropriate navigational aids. But I can tell you that one of the options out there is his disdain for Europe and his challenging, once again, of America, and about his desire to send a message that he really doesn't care what we think. And that's scary, because when you have someone who wants to recreate the former Soviet Union, if he thinks that we're not going to impose economic damages on Russia, then he's got another thing coming, because we're getting closer and closer to the point where we can really disrupt his economy with additional sanctions, secondarily put in place on places like India, who we want to be our friend and ally, and China, who is clearly our adversary today. And the fact that he would challenge or intentionally push the issues with our NATO allies, that's very disconcerting to us, and it's something that we've got to be very much aware as a possibility.
Well, I'm sure you're talking about secondary sanctions and other measures with all of your colleagues on the Armed Services Committee, Senator. How far does Vladimir Putin need to push that line to trigger these sanctions? We've been talking about it for months.
I think part of that will be up to President Trump. And here's the reason why. We're prepared to do it, but we want to do it in concert with the White House. We want to give the president the opportunity, as much as he can, to be able to negotiate with Mr. Putin. But the reality is that time is getting short. I think the president probably recognizes that. He's expressed his frustration, but clearly Mr. Putin has been recalcitrant in his efforts to, number one, go after Ukraine. It's like many of us have said from day one, every once in a while when you have a bully, the only way that you can deal with a bully is to punch him in the nose. And it may very well be time to economically punch Mr. Putin in the nose a lot harder than he's been punched in the past. And once again, we'll coordinate with the White House. The president is the leader on this, but we're going to be able to provide with him the tools that he believes necessary. And these sanctions are something that we would be able to move forth fairly quickly with regard to secondary sanctions on some of the people that are buying his oil and petroleum products.
Senator Rounds, we've seen that play out with India, and you mentioned it in passing in terms of secondary sanctions, in terms of targeting the funding for Putin's war machine. But in the fallout of that, at least from the imagery of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, it felt like that move pushed India closer towards Russia, closer towards China. Is there a risk here that in allowing those secondary sanctions, the United States would be alienating members of the global South?
Yes, that is a possibility, and that may very well be one of the reasons why we have not gone to the next step with regard to actually passing specific legislation to allow for that to happen. And so it's of concern. Look, we don't want to alienate India, but if they are going to be a facilitator to Russia in his attempt to reestablish the former Soviet Union, then it's probably time to send as powerful a message as we can to India that this is simply not acceptable, and that there are certain steps that if they take them, there will be consequences. And that's not something that we want to do, but when we're pushed in that direction, economic sanctions is probably a better step forward than an immediate move to military involvement.